This will be for the con assignment, special right triangles. So just some notes before we begin. These are the angle measurements of a triangle. In a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle, both legs are congruent, and the length of the hypotenuse is radical 2 times the length of a leg. All right, so please write down this formula because you're going to need it. So looking at the diagram here, we have a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle, okay? And across from the 45-degree angles, we have side lengths of S and S. All right, so the sides across from the 45-degree angles for any given triangle are always congruent. And if you call that side length S, the one across from the right angle is going to be S times radical 2. So recall that the side across from the right angle is your hypotenuse. All right, and the other sides are just called legs. So that's how we get the formula. Hypotenuse equals radical 2 times leg. All right, this is for a 45, 45, 90-degree triangle. And just to mention real quick, if you have a triangle with two angles congruent and go across from those angles to the sides, those side lengths are also going to be the same. All right, so this works for any given triangle with a pair of congruent angles. Now, the next two formulas are for a triangle with angle measurements of 30, 60, and 90 degrees. All right, in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the length of the hypotenuse is twice the length of the shorter leg. The length of the longer leg is radical 3 times the length of the shorter leg. So please write down these two formulas. The hypotenuse is 2 times the shorter leg, and the longer leg is radical 3 times the shorter leg. Okay, let's look at the diagram. We see the angle measurements of 30, 60, and 90 degrees. If we go across from our 30-degree angle, that side length is S. All right? And if we go across from the 60-degree angle, that side length is S times radical 3. And if we go across from the 90-degree angle, that side length is 2 times S. So we know that the side length across from 90 is always the hypotenuse. And we know that for any given triangle, the smaller angle will have a shorter side length across from it. So the smallest angle here is 30 degrees. Across from 30 degrees is going to be your short leg. And finally, the remaining side length is across from 60 degrees. That's going to be your long leg. So as you can see, the long leg is radical 3 times longer than the short leg, which is just S. And the hypotenuse is 2 times longer than the short leg. So we're going to use these two formulas in the assignment, and also the one for 45, 45, 90. So you can read the write-up if you want, but I think all of these measurements are always given on the diagram. All right. The first step you want to do is make sure you have all the angle measurements. Okay, so this one here is 90. This is 60. So this one has to be 30. All right, because we know we're dealing with 30, 60, 90 triangles. And also, if you just subtract these two from 180, you'll get 30. All right, so if you go across from 30, we said that's your short leg. I'm just going to label it short. And if we go across from 60, we said that's your long leg. So I'm just going to label it long. All right, this is short. And this is long. These are side lengths. All right, and if you go across from your right angle, that's your hypotenuse. But I don't think we need that. So there are two formulas we learned for 30, 60, 90 triangles. All right, the hypotenuse equals 2 times the short leg, and the long leg equals the short leg times radical 3. All right, we're looking for x, which is the long leg, so we don't need the one with the hypotenuse. All right. So in place of the long leg, the side length is x. In place of the short leg, the side length is 2, and that's times radical 3. Done. So look for 2 radical 3, answer B. All right, once again, you can read the write-up, but you don't really need to. Everything on the triangle is given. You're always solving for x. First step is to fill in missing angles. We have 30, 90, so this has to be 60. All right, of course, if you did 180 minus 30 and 90, you'll get 60. So let's label the side lengths. Across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. Across from the 30 is going to be your short leg. And across from the 60 is going to be your long leg. So again, we have our two formulas for the 30, 60, 90 triangle. All right, we're given the short leg, and we're looking to find the hypotenuse. So the long leg is really unnecessary in this case. I'm going to cross it out, or just erase it. In place of the hypotenuse, the side length is x. In place of the short leg, the side length is 8, and that's multiplied by 2. And of course, 8 times 2 is just 16. So the hypotenuse is 16. Answer E. All right, let's see. First step is to fill in the missing angle. All right, we have a 90, we have a 45, so this one must be 45. All right, of course, the angles add to 180, so just subtract these two from 180, you'll get 45. All right, so the second step is to label the side lengths. Across from your right angle is the hypotenuse. And for 45, 45, 90 triangles, the sides across from 45 are called legs. All right. And of course, you don't need it here, but across from 45, it's a side length of 7. So across from this 45, it would also be 7. Now, there's only one formula for this one. Hypotenuse equals leg times radical 2. Okay, we don't have short and long leg for this one because both legs are the same. So just use the formula. The hypotenuse, the side length is x. For the leg, the side length is 7, and that's times radical 2. Multiple choice, 7 radical 2. All right, first step is to find the missing angle. We have 30, 90, this must be 60. Second step is to label the sides. Across from 90, that's the hypotenuse, 12 radical 3. Across from 30, that's your short leg. And across from 60, we want to find X. Now there's 2 formulas for the 30, 60, 90. Okay, I wrote them right here. And as you can see, oh, I forgot to label the long leg. Across from 60 is your long leg. Okay, that's across from 60. So as you can see, we're given the long leg and the hypotenuse. All right, but we don't have one with long leg and hypotenuse. So we're going to have to use both of these formulas. Now, you really need to go with the side length that's given. See, they only give one side length. They gave the hypotenuse. So we need to use the formula with hypotenuse first. All right, so I'm going to erase this temporarily, and let's solve for the missing short leg. All right, the hypotenuse is 12 radical 3. The short leg, we don't have it. We'll just call it short. And that's multiplied by 2. All right, solving for the short leg, the opposite of times 2 is divided by 2. All right, right here the 2's cancel. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and we still have radical 3. That equals the short leg. So now we're going to use the other formula for the 30, 60, 90. Long is short times radical 3. Okay, so the long leg, we have an X. For the short leg, we have 6 radical 3. And that's times radical 3. All right, we have the 6. Radical 3 times radical 3 is just 3. Okay, anything under the square root multiplied by itself, you just remove the square root. And 6 times 3, of course, is 18. So that's your long leg. All right, just go to the choices. So I want to give you some extra notes here at the end. Let's say you have a square root in the denominator. All right, you're really not supposed to leave it like that. So the way you get rid of a square root in the denominator, you take that denominator, or the number that's under the square root, you multiply by the square root of that number divided by itself. Okay, radical 2 over radical 2 is just 1. So you're allowed to multiply by 1. In the numerator, you have 6 times radical 2. And the denominator, radical 2 times radical 2 is just 2. 6 divided by radical 2 is 3. And you still have the radical 2 left over. So if you have a square root in the denominator, multiply by that term over itself, and it will get rid of the square root in the denominator. If you're multiplying numbers with square roots, you keep the numbers that are not under the square root separate from the ones that are. So let's say you have 3 radical 2 times 2 radical 5. You just multiply 3 times 2 and get 6. And then for the numbers under the square root, you just keep them under the square root. 2 times 5 is 10. So that's going to be radical 10. So if you're multiplying, just keep them separate. And the same thing applies when you're dividing numbers with square roots. You keep the numbers that are not under the square root separate. So here, 6 radical 10 divided by 3 radical 5. 6 divided by 3 is just 2. And radical 10 divided by radical 5, 10 divided by 5 is just 2. And you keep that under the square root. So it's the same thing as multiplying.